Hey people, my name is Suede, and today we're going to be talking about the QC mod for Civ 3 multiplayer. So, first a bit of a history. QC is short for Quick Civ, and it was a mod that was packaged with Civ 3 Conquest. It's pretty obscure, so you might not know about it, but you can actually see it right here if you click on Civ content. Quick Civ, here it is. So yeah, this came with the game, and when the multiplayer community first started for Civ 3, people were looking for game variants because the base game does not really work well for multiplayer for Civ 3, and so QC was one of the ones that people started playing. Eventually it was seen as a bit of originally it was seen as a bit of a novelty, but over the years it's actually become our most popular mod. And a lot of that is thanks to some changes that have to do with balance that the community has made over the years. So yeah, first question is, why is QC so ideal for multiplayer? And the biggest reason for that is it fits the biggest chunk of the game possible into the shortest time frame. Like more content, more text, more units, more whatever, more fun. And games of Civ 3 multiplayer are a 3-hour time commitment, so it has to all fit within that 3 hours. And QC, in that time, it allows us to play from the ancient era to the start of the industrial era. It's also relatively balanced and has a healthy and fun metagame, so yeah, we enjoy playing it. So it's different. We play with 2-city elimination on. You lose 2 cities, you die. The text, the buildings, the wonders, the units cost half as much. Everything happens twice as fast. There's twice as much culture. Your workers work a lot faster, etc. The tile yields and the growth mechanics are quite different. A lot of that has to do with like doubling the growth of the individual cities. And there are also small changes to the tech tree, but the tech tree is mostly the same. So the changes are few enough that I can actually go over them one by one. We'll just start off a game here. We'll just start a game and have a look at that tech tree. So you'll notice that, yeah, it looks like the same tech tree as the normal game, but there are some very small changes to it. So for example, irrigation without fresh water is available at masonry, so that's why there's the electricity symbol there. The AMA, a boat used to contact your allies in situations where you would otherwise be unable to do so. So because you need to contact your allies in order to trade techs in multiplayer, and if you can't trade techs with your allies, you're at an enormous disadvantage. So in situations where, for example, one player started on an island, the team would be at a huge disadvantage, and it would kind of ruin the game. So we instituted the AMA. It's available at Polythism. It has 4 moves, and crucially, it can go over sea tiles. It's very expensive, and it only has 1 hit point, so you wouldn't want to build it otherwise, but it's good for getting contact with your allies. And we also threw offshore platforms just at Monarchy, just because why not? The specific reason for that was because otherwise peninsula starts and island starts would be very bad, and we want those starts to be more balanced, so that the game is fun even when you start in those situations. So the Middle Ages, again, mostly the same. Map making and contact trading are available at Engineering. That's just for better team play. Worker speed is available at banking. That's just like to reward players for doing the top techs, because otherwise people would only rush for cavalries and nothing else. And a big change is that all civs have access to a unique unit in the medieval era that gives them their golden age. None earlier, none later. Every civ has one in the medieval era. So that's just to give people even access to the golden age. Yeah, the Germans have the G8 Knight, which is just a Golden Age Knight, just a regular knight that triggers a Golden Age when you win combat with it. The Greeks and the Carthaginians have their normal unique unit, but it's available at Feudalism instead of Bronze Working. So just if you look at the tech tree here, Hoplite, Numidian Mercenary, yeah. And then the Iroquois have access to the Mounted Warrior at Astronomy. So that's just regular Mounted Warrior. The stats are all the same. All the unique units have the same stats. Just when it's available is then. So yeah, all the other civs are either removed from the game or they have their normal unique unit. So the industrial era, this is quite different actually. So the game, like we said, it's a 3-hour time commitment. After 2.5 hours, when the time you get to the industrial era, you probably want the game to end soon. So what we do is we just give players a bunch of offensive options, like the tank, the marine, and the helicopter, and we just let them kill each other. Another change would be the rifleman has amphibious assault. So the reason for that was because otherwise there's a strategy where you place warriors and outposts along your coast. And if you do that, then the enemy civs can't land units on your shores. So that was really unfun, and there's no counterplay against that. So what we did was we give amphibious assault to the rifleman, just so there is some form of counterplay against that. So yeah, that's the tech tree. First of all, the growth mechanics. Now, there's no despotism penalty. This makes irrigation quite important. Food yields are doubled, mostly, but citizens eat 4 food per turn instead of 2, and settlers cost 3 population instead of 2. So that means you need to be size 4 to build a settler, and not size 3 like in the base game, so that's pretty important. Here's a screenshot from just a game of the city screen. So in the normal game, grassland is 2 food. Here it is 4 food. Normally a forest is 1 food. Here it is 2 food. Normally a wines tile would be 3 food without the despotism penalty, which, as a reminder, there is no despotism penalty in this scenario. So 3 becomes 6 because it's doubled. So yeah, you might notice that the citizens eat 20 food because there's 5 citizens, and each citizen eats 4 food per turn instead of 2. City Center Square also produces 4 food instead of 2. And with production, you'll notice things are actually the same, mostly. So all the shield yields are exactly the same. The only difference is that the spearmen and all other units and all other buildings cost half as much as they would in the base game. So for example, in accelerated production, vanilla Civ 3, a spearman costs 10 shields. Here it costs 5 shields. Great. Changes in food yields. So food yields are sometimes not what you'd expect. Normally they're doubled, like in the case of this grassland start. But that's not always the case. So the reason we did that was because normally jungle starts and island starts and desert starts would be pretty bad, and we wanted to balance those a bit. So for example, desert tiles normally produce 0 food in the base game. Doubled 0 should be 0, right? Well, instead we made it so that they're 1 food and 1 shield. So that's not quite as bad as they otherwise would be. It makes them slightly more playable, but it's still worse than plains. So yeah, you get a similar dynamic, but not quite as extreme and not quite as punishing if you spawn there. If you're unsure about the tile yield, you can just right-click on the square in question. Normally that gets kind of messed up in the base game because of the despotism penalty, but because there's no despotism penalty here, the game won't lie to you about like what the value of the food is. It will always tell you the truth. So yeah, miscellaneous stuff. Temples, cathedrals, coliseums provide additional happiness. I mean, I still wouldn't recommend building these 2 buildings, but the option is there if you want it. Hurry production using forced labor gives 14 shields instead of 20. The reason for that was because in this scenario, a cavalry costs 20 shields, and being able to hurry production on a cavalry in a single turn was kind of ridiculously overpowered. So we fixed that to 14 shields, and to compensate for that, the unhappiness penalty lasts 17 turns instead of 20 turns. So yeah, that's all there is to the scenario. Most of the multiplayer games I post and the ones I play are QC. So yeah, I hope to be posting more games like that in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed.